they fondly remember about Whittier when they were students here and what sticks out in their mind and what they were willing to share publicly. So Veronica willing to share publicly that she enjoyed semester at sea and she really appreciated the opportunity to apply her financial aid, that Whittier was really helpful, which is true. A lot of schools will not help you go study abroad. If you have financial aid here on the campus, you have to come up with your own money to study abroad. So she found that to really be supportive of her dream of doing that. And now she's actually currently in a PsyD program, and she's going to explain, I hope, the difference between PsyD and PhD when it comes to psychology, because there is an interesting differentiation in how she eventually found herself studying to be a professional psychologist.
Okay, so as Linda mentioned, I am currently in a doctoral program. I'm just down the street at the Rosemead School of Psychology, which is Biola. First things first, so the difference between a PsyD and a PhD, since somebody had that specific question, they're both doctoral degrees, so you will be Dr. So-and-so, regardless of which path you pursue. But the PhD, it's a Doctor of Philosophy in Psychology, and it's very much focused on research. The PsyD, it's a Doctor of Psychology degree, and the focus is on clinical training. So I'm in my first semester of my doctoral program, and I'm already seeing patients. They start you off quickly with patients when you're a PsyD student. The curriculum is all the same pretty much, but when it comes to your dissertation or your doctoral paper, as a PhD student, you're required to do your own research. You have to come up with a topic, a research design, find participants, do all the statistics, and then write your paper. As a PsyD student, it's mostly, your doctoral paper is pretty much a very long literature review. So you're just reading a lot and kind of condensing the information and presenting it with your own interpretation. They're both long papers, a lot of work, but you're not doing your own research as a PsyD student. The reason I chose that particular degree is because I love to read research. I'm not interested in doing research or going into academia. If you're a psychology major and you're interested in teaching, a PhD would probably be the way to go. But if you already know that you want to focus on working with patients and doing clinical work, sometimes the PsyD program will offer better training. Either way, you're going to be required to see patients and you're going to be required to have hours of supervision in the clinic, but different programs, it varies from program to program, but a PsyD program is going to focus just a little bit more on some advanced training for seeing and working with patients. As far as funding is concerned for a doctoral degree, I know that she mentioned she gave you guys a sheet. When you're a PhD student, there are more funding opportunities because you can get funding through research, or your school will provide funding for whatever it is that you want to be looking into. As a PsyD student, you have to be a little bit more creative about finding funding for your degree, just because you're not focused so much on research, so there aren't going to be schools or government funds necessarily always available. But there are a lot of programs that will either forgive you of your student debt once you've paid everything, or there are scholarships that you can get through the military. That's where I'm getting my scholarship. Hopefully it'll be through the Navy, so they'll actually pay for my school and give me a stipend. There's the Public Health Care Corps. They'll pay for your degree, or they'll pay back your student loans. So those are some options. And then, what else did you want me to cover? Just those two things?
No, and then we're going to talk about your master's.
Oh, my master's degree, right, okay. So, the thing about psychology, with an undergraduate degree in psychology, there's a lot you can do, but not necessarily working with patients. In order to work with patients, you have to have an MFT, which is a license it stands for Marriage and Family Therapist, or you have to have a doctoral degree. And that's because it's not your degree that matters when it comes to working with patients, it's your licensure. In order to be licensed to practice, you have to have something like 3,500 hours. So my recommendation, and I wish I would have known this when I was an undergraduate, is if you know that you want to be a therapist or be a counselor or work with people in a clinical setting, it's better to go for your MFT or go straight to your doctorate. Getting a master's degree, it's not a waste of time, but it's not necessary to go on to either an MFT or a doctoral program. Whatever you do in the master's program is going to be covered again in the first 2 years of your doctoral program. So it's probably better to just go straight from undergrad into a doctoral program, or get out of undergrad, work for a few years, and then go into a doctoral program. Personally, I took time off. I took off 2 years between my undergrad and master's, and then a year off between my master's program and my doctoral program. And being that I am going to be working with patients in a clinical setting, and that's what I do now, I have found it to be very helpful because I have what grad schools call real-world experience. If someone sits with me, it's not like I came out of a bubble of undergrad and now I'm dealing with patients who are in crisis. I worked in corporate America. I've had a chance to kind of live outside of school. And I think that graduate schools, especially in psychology, really appreciate that because when someone sits across from you for therapy, you're better able to meet them where they're at. So when it comes to a psychology degree, I definitely encourage you, if you're interested in it, to pursue a doctorate, but to also keep in mind that there needs to be balance between academia and real life, so you can really get where people are coming from when they come to you as a therapist later on in your career. So,
can you talk, just address a little bit the difficulty about getting in, and as an undergrad, what things would make you more competitive for, let's say, the doctoral program?
Okay. So it really depends on whether you want to apply to a public school, a large public school, or a smaller private school. I mean, everybody here, obviously, this is a private institution, so you see the value of a smaller school. A lot of the larger state-funded, government-funded PhD programs, they are really interested in research. So if you have the opportunity as an undergraduate to do research or assist with the publication of a paper, even if it's here at Whittier or even if it's somewhere else, I really encourage you to do that because in psychology, especially for a PhD, what matters is how many publications your name is on. That's how you get promoted in psychology. That's how you get teaching positions later on when you're working in academia. So I definitely encourage you to look into research opportunities. As far as PsyD programs are concerned, because the focus is more on clinical work, they're interested in research experience, but that's not their focus. From my experience, they really wanted to know what I had done community service-wise. So if you have the opportunity to do something like be at the Boys and Girls Club, work at your local USO, work in a shelter, and have that experience of being with people who are in crisis, whether it's in person or on a hotline, like a suicide hotline, for example, you can be trained to do that. I encourage that because you're able to have some real experience of being with people and helping people through difficult situations. The larger programs, when I say larger, I mean the public programs at state universities are usually harder to get into because the way that it works is they'll take between 1 and 5 students a year, but your entire career there as a student will be funded because you'll be tied to a research grant. Private programs tend to take more students. My current class size at Rosemead is 26, but none of us are attached to grants or to research funding, so we can research whatever we want. We can do whatever we want with our time in graduate school. As far as levels of difficulty are school to school, because different schools tend to have different research focuses. I think the best advice anyone gave me when I was applying for graduate school in psychology is no matter how good of a candidate you are, at the end of the day, you'll have to do either research or doctoral paper, and they won't take you as a student if they don't have someone on their faculty who can advise you and mentor you through the process. So when you start looking at graduate schools for psychology, I really encourage you to not just look at the school website and see where the school is and kind of the general statistics and information that we all look at, but look at the faculty profiles and see if there's someone in the faculty who's either interested in your area of research or who's doing something with their career that you might also be interested in doing, because the chances are that that'll be the person who interviews you, or they'll be reviewing your application, and if you get into that school, they'll be the person that you're more likely to work with as an advisor. Also, very important, I don't know if you guys have heard of the APA, the American Psychological Association. They're the organization that accredits all of the doctoral programs in the United States. And you want to make sure that whatever program you go to is APA accredited because it's easier to get your license. And in some states, the only way you can get a license to practice is if you've been to an APA accredited school. So make sure that you look at their list of accredited schools. Make sure that you don't attend a school that's on probation. or that has had their license revoked, because it'll affect whether or not you'll be able to get your license to practice. And you don't want to spend $120,000 on grad school and then not be able to be licensed to practice. So make sure that you look into their accreditations and things like that.
Yeah, I think if you have any questions right now, since each program is going to be different, if anyone has questions about the PsyD or PhD, ask it now.
So, for like a PsyD, do you need like, you know, X amount of hours actually doing like clinical work? Like you said, you needed 3,500 hours for the MFT program. Do you also need that for a PsyD, or?
Yes, you do. And the way that it works is you don't actually do, they're called supervision hours, right? So the time that counts is the time that you're actually sitting with a patient doing therapy, or the time that you spend talking to your supervisor about a patient. That's how you log your hours. And the way that it works is you usually do about half of those hours while you're in school. And then once you graduate and you have your degree, you go to an internship or you go to a fellowship where you do the rest of your hours. So the time to get your license once you're done with your doctorate is usually between 1 to 3 years. So it's not like graduation, you know, you're a doctor and you immediately get your license. That's a whole other step to the process.
Okay. That's after you get your degree.
It's after you get your degree, yeah. It's like part 2 of being a psychologist.
Okay.
And then also you said that you got your marriage family license and master's in that first before. If you're interested in like clinical work, besides like the maybe like amount of like, you know, pay that you get, is there any difference if you just get your master's, or if you got like a PsyD?
Yeah, there is a little bit of a difference. So, really the difference, because you can do anything as an MFT that you can do as an actual doctor of psychology. The difference is who will hire you. For example, if you're ever interested in doing anything with the military or the Department of Defense, unless it's through the Department of Veteran Affairs or the VA, the U.S. government will not hire you without a doctorate. So you need to have a doctorate if you want to go down that path.
Yeah.
A lot of times if you want to teach, you also need to have your doctorate degree. If you just want to have a private practice and just do therapy, an MFT is perfectly fine for that. You still have to do your 3,500 hours of supervision. You still have to get licensed. But treatment-wise, there's nothing that you can do, or there's really no difference in how you can practice.
If you're going for a PhD, like you're interested in research in psychology, is it you go to master's for 2 years and then you have to go to a doctoral program, or can you combine it into one program?
Most of the programs are combined. So, for example, I have my master's degree from Pepperdine, and at Biola, after 2 years, I'll be earning another master's degree and then my doctorate at the end. So some schools require you to have a master's going in. Their website will tell you that. But a lot of the programs are combined. So you actually earn a master's en route to your doctorate degree.
So after 2 years there you get a master's and then you just stay there until you get a doctorate.
Yeah, so pretty much you're halfway through the program, you graduate, you walk with your class and get a diploma, you get your degree, and then you're still at the same school for 2 more years, 3 more years, getting your doctoral degree.
In some PhD programs, though, they just say, oh, by the way, you have your master's. There's no walking, there's no diploma, it's just kind of given that it's there, and it's just all built in.
Yeah, and the thing I was going to say too is I had originally started getting, with my master's degree, wanting to pursue that because I was going to do my MFT and then, you know, wait a little bit and do my doctorate. What I found out is that in the state of California, to get your MFT, you have to do your 3,500 hours of supervision and then your license. And then if you go to a doctoral program, you have to do another 3,500 hours again, and then you can be licensed again as a doctor of psychology. So if you know that you're going to end up wanting to be a doctor of psychology, you might as well just go straight to the doctoral program because you're going to be doing double the work. So.
Okay, well, then the next panelist I'd like to introduce, this is Dr. NIEVES. VILLAREAL. We go by both of them together.
As a doctor, I kept my maiden name.
Okay.
Just NIEVES.
Dr.
Too
NIEVES.
complicated to change everything.
Well, we're really happy that she's here, and her Her memories of Whittier are actually on the bottom, but she was a member of the choir here for 4 years, and the choir does have trips built into their schedule, and so she enjoyed having that opportunity and making her friends through those groups, and volunteering at our local hospital, the Presbyterian Hospital in Whittier, is where she got her medical exposure. Is that where it also solidified that you wanted to be a doctor by being in that environment, or did you already know? You already knew. Oh.
I'll get to it.
Right, we already, and if any of you are interested, we have an agreement with Presbyterian Hospital still for how to sign up and be a volunteer, and we'd be happy in the career planning office to hook you up if you want to learn out to get some hours and some exposure and just clarification if that's an environment that you like being in every day. So the medical school path is a very intense one, so why don't you tell us how you survived?
Okay, so I was one of those people that wanted to be a doctor since she was a kid. It's just sort of one of those seeds your parents plant and you have no idea what you're talking about as you're saying it. So I came into Whittier College, I looked for colleges looking at what their sort of pre-med program was, what their record was of getting people into medical school. And of course I was pretty attached to my family, so the thought of me leaving California was disastrous, so I stayed locally. I didn't live on campus, I actually commuted. And I was a biology major. I kept it very simple. Like I tell you, I had this focus, this is what I was going to do. But to go into medical school, it doesn't matter what your major is. It can be English, it can be philosophy, it can be music. What matters is that you meet the requirements to get into medical school. So if you're a science major, it's kind of easier because you've already done a lot of the classes that are necessary. But they actually like well-rounded people, and sometimes they think that if you wanted to be a doctor since you were 5, you're maybe not that well-rounded. But actually, part of, that's what you mentioned about being over at PIH, that was the 3rd hospital I had volunteered at. It was sort of part of my upbringing to do volunteer work. I went to a Catholic high school, so it was required. You had to volunteer somewhere in the community. It didn't have to be with the churches, it had to be volunteer work of some sort. So I did some of, I did it during that time as well. And the singing came because, going to Catholic school, everybody's part of the choir, right? They don't test you. There's no like, how good are you? You're just gonna sing. And so by the time I got to high school, I kind of realized I actually really liked it, and then I continued it when I was here in college. And yes, the extra bonus is you get to travel. So definitely is nicer than having to study science and mathematics and so forth all the time. So those all things I think were valuable when I was applying for medical school, because the conversation isn't just about you as a future physician, it's more about you as a person. What are you bringing to the profession or to the table that's different, that stands you apart? And that's what makes the application process is very competitive for graduate school, period. It doesn't matter what graduate school program you're applying to. They do look, obviously they look at your grades, they look at your scores. I had a good grade. I didn't have the best scores, I'm not gonna lie about it. I had a lot of volunteer experience, and I had a lot of extracurricular activities that were outside of the medical field that showed that I was interested in just participating in human activity, in being selfless and giving to others, and even just doing choir. Why am I doing choir forever? Because I like it. No other reason. I'm nothing else looking into it besides that. And I think when you pick a career, you have to imagine yourself there. What does being a doctor mean? Because like I'm telling you guys, I spent most of life saying I wanted to be a doctor, having no clue what that meant. And thankfully I got in. I actually had I didn't think I even had a backup plan. I'm not sure what I was gonna do. So I got lucky. I got in and all that, but it's not an easy career in any way. And there were many times where through the training process, I wasn't going to quit because I'd gone that far. It was just too much to turn around and say, you know what, I think I'm going to do this instead. But there's many moments, I don't know about you guys, but there's many moments in your training where you question, like, is this really where I want to be? This is so hard, this is taking so much, this is so expensive, I've given up so much of my life, you know, we all end up feeling that way. So you have to keep, like they say, you have to like keep your eye on the target and make sure that that's the target you want. You're not there because, you know, your parents told you, you're not there because it sounds cool. You have to understand the career you're getting into. So I knew I wanted to take care of patients. I knew I wanted to work with people. And wanting to work with people, there were actually many career paths I could have taken that I would have been good at. I taught Sunday school for 8 years. I would have been a great teacher too. And actually medicine, you are a teacher. You're constantly teaching. I've been pediatrician, so I'm constantly teaching parents about their child's disease, or you know, how to avoid coming back to the place they're at the moment, teaching them about medications, why an antibiotic is important, why I don't think you need an antibiotic, why you should go get your vaccines, what you should be worried about. It's just constant teaching. So you have to be a people person to begin with. Of course, the medical and the science careers all have, like even for medicine, there's an MD and then there's PhD programs, and you will find many physicians that are both MD, PhDs. And that just means when they have a PhD, that means they spent another at least 4 more years doing research on a particular topic that they've now become the experts at. And you have to be just willing to put in the time, basically. I didn't know what kind of medicine I was going to do, but I like working with kids and families, so that's how I ended up in pediatrics. Somewhere by the time I was in college, I knew I was going to be a pediatrician as well. And that's part of the thing. I think you can't doubt yourself. You say you're going to do something, and if you've decided that's what you're good at, and you're willing to work hard, you're going to get there. And you just have to believe in yourself, no matter how many times people tell you it's too hard, or it's going to take too long, it's going to be too expensive. And I just thought, you know what, one day I'm going to be 30 years old, and I'm either going to be what I want to be, or I'm not. That was it. That was my attitude. And, you know, thankfully things worked out. But I think part of it, you have to have that mentality, the mentality that I succeed and I can, you know, I can reach my goals and just continue. Don't give up. The minute you give up, the minute you doubt yourself for reals, then that's the minute you've taken a step back. And somebody else is not going to take a step back. So it's competitive. Someone else will take that slot for you. But as I was doing my pediatric residency, I did medical school up in Washington, Seattle. And I did my residency back here in Orange County because, again, I was homesick, right? I wanted to come back to sunny Southern California. So while I was at CHOC, doing general pediatrics training, I realized that I really liked it, but I was kind of more of a little bit more intellectual than I thought I would want to be, so I ended up choosing to do pediatric infectious diseases. And that meant 3 more years of training. That meant going to UCLA. That meant doing research. So any subspecialty in medicine, just so you guys know from that get-go, any subspecialty requires that you do research. Whether it be basic science research, which means you're in a lab, you're actually running PCR machines, you're working with, you know, laboratory animals, you're actually there, like, stuck in a little room, or you're doing clinical research. But if you go to many of the big universities, so I went to UCLA, they were really focused on basic science research. They were really focused on making me an academic physician, and which would have meant that the majority of my time as a doctor would have been doing research, and maybe 30–40% of the time would have been taking care of patients. So I finished that degree program, but I knew what I wanted. When I went into that one and I accepted the research responsibility, I'm like, well, I'm going to give it a try. I haven't really done that much research besides some dissecting reptiles with Dr. Goldberg when I was a Whittier College student. I thought, you know, I'm a smart person. I can figure it out, right? So I was there for about 5 years, the program was 3. I stayed an additional almost 2 years as an attending. And it just came to a point where, again, I was reevaluating. I'm like, you know, I really didn't go into medicine because thinking that I would be in a lab. I went to medicine thinking I was going to take care of patients, talk to families, and take care of children. So about 1.5 years ago now, almost 2 years actually, I went back to CHOC. So I work at CHOC 100% of the time taking care of children and the families. And I'm still very involved in research, but it's all clinical research. So it's, from my standpoint, it's funner. But there's value to both, depending on what your forte is. And that's kind of how I landed here. I think having been at Whittier College did help me in medical school because the University of Washington was trying sort of a different approach to teaching medicine, where they were being more, how do I describe it? Less just like check off the answer. There was much more like essays, and like you had to verbalize your understanding, which means a lot of our tests were actually little essays. I'm like, wait, I'm back at Whittier College, which is good for me because this whole like ABCD option business just was not that much fun. And I like to be able to explain myself and tell you why I'm thinking what I'm thinking. And so a lot of it was they were sort of transitioning where the first 2 years it was just it was mostly like books. 2 years in classes, but in those 2 years is when they were already integrating very interactive learning, and that was kind of unique for that time. And then the second 2 years of medical school, you learn on the job. You're the student on the wards, helping. You're part of the team taking care of the patient, and this learning on the job continues. That's what medicine is about. You go, you read, but it's not going to stick, it's not going to make sense until you actually see it in the case and see it in the patient. So if that's the kind of learner you are, that would be good. You just have to make it to the first 2 years because that's all book reading. And the rest of training, just like you're saying that there's so many hours that are required for somebody to trust you, to be independent and take care of a patient, well, that's for a reason. All of your patients look at you and they're like, how old are you? I have a few gray hairs now, so now it helps. But you want to show that you're confident. You want to be able to say that you have experience. You want to be able to say, yes, I've seen this many times before. You're going to be okay, or we're going to take care of you. But medicine is the same thing. Medicine, whether you're a doctor, whether you're in nursing, whether you're a physician's assistant, it's all about how much time you actually spend hands-on taking care of people, being supervised for it. So, medical school, the last 2 years, you're taking care of patients. Residency is the shortest ones, are 3 years, you're taking care of patients. And then if you specialize, it's another 3 years on taking care of patients. And you're a doctor when you finish medical school, but nobody's going to let you work. You still have to put in the time. So, like I kept telling myself and answering to people, if you want to do a career that seemed to like so long because there's all these requirements before you get there, you're going to get to that age regardless. And either you're going to one day sit back and say, you know what, I'm happy with the hard work and I like my job, I like getting up early in the morning and going to it, then it's worth it. So don't let that scare you, because I know that scares many people from doing graduate programs because it just seems like it would take forever to get there. And then you still enjoy your life. You're still a normal person and try to go out and do fun stuff and everything. Obviously, there's some limitations. If you extend yourself, it's going to be hard. I've been a pediatrician for how long now? I finished medical school in 2002. So my 10-year med school reunion is coming up next year. And I'm kind of the late bloomer. This is my first baby. Yes, I am pregnant. I'm not just fat. So things like, yes, I'm 35 years old and I'm barely having my first child. And I've been a pediatrician for almost 10 years, and I'm helping people take care of their kids. And I can't tell you how many times people have asked me if I have children. And I'm like, no, But you don't have to have a heart attack to be able to take care of one either, right? That's kind of my response. But I can't say that I regret any of it. there were times where I would ask myself, would I do this again? At that point, when I was like so stressed, Ed and I would be like, I'm not sure, so sure. Maybe I would have gone into nursing, or maybe I would have been a physician's assistant, because at the end my goal was to take care of patients and work with families, and there's many ways I could have done that. You know, but I can tell you, once you start something and you're surviving, it's just tough. You're not going to give up at that point. But you know, there's sort of many things to consider, I guess. And then, of course, the cost of medical school, the cost of graduate programs. You look for funding. You apply for grants and scholarships. And if you go into a research program, any PhD program, for the most part, they're fully funded. And if you go straight to an MD program, then it's harder to get money. But hopefully, even nowadays, hopefully by the time you're done, you're making at least decent enough to be able to pay back the loans. So.
Anyone have any questions? Our pre-med student over here would like.
Okay, so I'm a junior and I'm not aware of the extracurricular requirements. I'm just more focused on like your personal statement. Like from your point of view, what do you think should entail?
I think personal statements, and I've read many of them, because I was on the admissions committee for the University of Washington as well, and throughout, even in my fellowship, like we help choose the new fellows, basically. You have to make it stand out. Not by listing your accomplishments necessarily, because you've already done that. That's already in your application. You don't want someone to read in paragraph form what you've already listed, basically. But you want your personal statement to reflect you the person. So you want to make it personal. It's fair game to talk about your background. What about who you are as a person, how you grew up, your family, whatever it makes you want to pick this particular career. And then, why do you think you would be good at it? What do you have to offer to it, or what unique perspective? And how do you see yourself in it? What do you see yourself doing in whatever area of medicine you're picking? And make sure your grammar is correct, and you spell check it. You'd be surprised. If you have grammar mistakes, it just completely distracts the reader, and it's just like, I'm sorry, but they can't even proofread their own. And don't make it more than a page. Nobody wants to read more than a page. I mean, do you guys want to read more than a page on anybody? And you're reading a ton of them too. So that's the thing. So you keep it brief, you keep it very personal, and just kind of make it you. Like if one of your best friends that studies something completely not related to medicine reads it, this is like, yeah, you're pretty cool. I like you. Oh yeah, I'll show you I'm my friend. But like listing just your list of accomplishments is pretty useless, I would say.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, let's jump over to Vincent. We're going to skip Adam. And Vincent comes to us actually from USC. We won't hold that against him that he went over there to the big school. And actually, one of his fondest memories of Whittier, when I asked him, was the fact that all of his friends that he made during orientation week are still his friends. So all the freshmen can look forward to that. I hope you make good friends, because they kind of tend to stick. All right. Yeah.
It's very true. So my name's Vincent Vigil, and I graduated from Whittier in 2002 with my BA in business. And I went to USC for my master's in post-secondary administration and student affairs. So that's to be an educator at a college campus, so similar to what Linda's doing here. And then after that, I went into the EDD doctorate program. So graduated in 2007. But similar to what you heard already between a PhD and an EDD program, the EDD is more for educator practitioners. So people that want to work in the classroom, people that want to interact with students more, and the PhD is more for research. So if you want to do more research, If you want to be the one who's writing the books or creating the theories that they're going to read in the classroom, then you want to go in the PhD track. So my EDD program was a full-time program, so I did it in 3 years. So I went straight through. I went from like kindergarten, middle school, high school, college, master's, doctorate, and I didn't stop at all. So when I was done with my doctorate, I was so excited, and I didn't know what to do with all my free time, but I figured some stuff out. But I went all the way through for it, and you know, it was a great experience. Whittier really prepared me tremendously for my master's program, and I think it's because of that liberal arts education. So, you know, with the liberal arts education, I was a business major, and sure, I took accounting, I took business law, and, you know, I took marketing, which was great. But then in addition to that, I had, you know, my writing that I had to take, you know, the art classes that we have to take. So all that extra stuff really helped me moving into my master's program, because as what was already shared before, other people at other schools don't get that. Like, it's all just business and business focus. So when I was in my master's program with other individuals, they were, say, psychology at like a big UC system school, and all their focus was just psychology. So they didn't know how to maybe do a PowerPoint presentation, which they didn't. They didn't know maybe how to, you know, integrate outside readings outside of that particular discipline and how that correlates with maybe some of the research that you're doing. So they didn't know any of that. And, you know, when I would tell them where I went, I said, oh, I went to Whittier College, and then they'll say, oh, is that a community college? And I'm like, no, it's not. It's a small private liberal arts school. I paid just as much as I'm paying for my master's program, and I learned just as much, right? So it was a great experience, you know, Whittier College, and I think it truly did help me. Going into the master's program, I didn't have a great GRE score. It was average. You know, I didn't even have a good SAT score that well when I went into Whittier. But I think what helped me, and someone mentioned this before, was just the balance act that I played. You know, being able to balance having a good, you know, strong kind of involvement factor along with, you know, getting decent grades. So when I applied for my master's program, they really looked at that. They looked at how well-rounded is this individual. Sure, it's score-wise, you know, he is average, not above average, just he's barely making it, but he's contributed, right? He's contributed to his school, he's made a difference, and yet he still maintained good grades. So that's what they really looked at going into my master's program. So don't stress out about the GRE as much. You could take it again and again and again if you want to, if you have the funding to do that. But I wouldn't recommend it. You know, study as much as you can, but don't stress out if your score is not as good as you would like it to be. As long as you make the minimum of what that program's looking for, you know, that's all you should really worry about. Just getting the bare minimum, because here at Whittier, I'm sure all of you are so involved in so many different activities. Those are things that you definitely want to highlight, either in your application or in that personal statement. You know, you definitely want to highlight that involvement also. So going into the EDD program, I never thought that I wanted to be someone working in education. I wanted to be a business major. I wanted to go into marketing. But, you know, really getting my involvement here and getting involved really changed my mindset that I wanted to make a difference in someone's life. That's so cliche in education, but it's definitely how I felt, that I really wanted to make a difference. And so I had some great mentors here. I applied, and going into the EDD program, the doctorate program, again, it was how well-rounded I was. You know, my GRE scores again, you know, I didn't have to take them again, thankfully, but they were okay. They were the ones that I took for my master's, and I used those same scores because I took them within that 3-year period. They were okay. My personal statement, I just had to revise that, and I was very involved at USC with my master's. So I went into the EDD program, and they looked at that well-rounded nature of me. So now I am teaching, so I'm teaching as an adjunct faculty with the School of Education. So I'm teaching other teachers. These are principals, these are teachers, and they're always amazed on how young I look, and you know, they tease me about it, and they kind of test the waters a little bit. But you need to know your stuff when you go into your master's program and your EDD program, you know, because it's going to be a very competitive environment. and people are going to strive for either the faculty's attention or strive for that better grade. So it can be very competitive. So just as in the classroom, I need to know all the readings, I need to know what they're reading. Same thing when I went into school. You know, I had to keep up, I had to stay aware of what was going on, because it is a very competitive environment, and I'm sure Adam's going to talk a lot about that competitiveness in law school. But it is still competitive in education. You know, people are striving for excellence, and it's just very different. It's a very different mindset. You know, you're there to attain that goal. You're not there so much, people aren't there to make friends, or maybe they're not there to get involved with campus life. They're there to get in within those 2 years and to graduate. And me being from Whittier, I was like, well, I still want to get involved with campus life, and I still want to make friends, and I want to go to USC football games, and you know, so I was still trying to do everything. And that's kind of the Whittier way, right? Like, we're well-rounded individuals. We're not here just for school. There's other aspects to us. So I think that really helped me. About funding for the EDD program, so I went straight through. I owe a lot of money. USC is not cheap. Whittier College is not cheap either. And so just add that up. But what I decided to do when I was in the EDD program was to work on campus at USC. So I was fortunate enough to get a job, and that job helped pay for my EDD program. So they paid up to 6 units of my program, and the full-time program is 9 units each semester. So that helped. So again, trying to find methods to get your education, whether it be grants or maybe getting a job on the campus or applying for outside scholarships, you know, just strategize. I'm a first-generation college student, so my parents did not go to school. You know, I'm from a low socioeconomic status. I grew up in Pico Rivera, right down, you know, the street over there. So I didn't come from, you know, money, and my parents didn't have a lot of money for school, and so I had to find my own way. And I did it, you know. Statistically, maybe I shouldn't be up here, but I finished, you know, and I got done. So there's ways to do it. You just have to figure it out and try to manipulate that system as much as you can in terms of funding. So yeah, that's all I'm really going to say. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me about them. I heard someone wanted to, do you have questions about USC's education program?
I'll ask you afterwards.
Oh yeah, ask me afterwards. Okay. I put you on the spot, sorry.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
All right, Adam, we saved the law school perspective till last, because you're in it right now, aren't you?
Yep.
Well, before he left Whittier and took on this new identity, his old identity as a poet, he remembers being instrumental in bringing back the Sachsen to campus. They were underground for how many years, did you say? 15 years.
I was in Saxon when they were underground.
Okay. And then he ended up being one of our illustrious student body presidents as well. So, okay, I think, you know, law school has a lot of myths around it, and I hear, as the career counselor here, and all of you are welcome to come and talk to me about your ideas, I can't tell you how many people sit down and say, I think I want to be a lawyer. And so then I begin asking them a lot of questions about that, not because I have personal experience, but because I've been here for 11 years, and every year I have some kind of panel that has attorneys, and I hear about law school, and I hear about who succeeds and who doesn't succeed. So I usually try and pass on that kind of wisdom. But now you're going to hear Adam's fresh perspective on getting in, staying in, and what you hope to do.
Well, I'm going to get a little bit cynical first, because the legal profession is incredibly cynical. Lawyers as a whole are one of the most depressed groups of people, statistically speaking. Rates of alcoholism and drug abuse because of depression are rampant in the legal community. So much so that the State Bar Association and local county bar associations provide rehab programs and treatment programs to help people.
Can I interject one thing?
Yes.
They're also the #1 career that seeks career counseling. So people who become counselors later, the #1 group that goes back to find career counseling are the lawyers.
Not only that, but and I'm not making this up, but I might be a little bit off, but about 1/3 of attorneys who have or people who graduated from law school in the past 5 years or so are not working in positions that require the JD. So, and that's not because they thought, oh, I'm going to go to law school and that's going to open up so many different doors and I'm going to be able to get a JD and do something else. It's because they couldn't get a job in the legal field. That's not entirely true, of course. There are some people who got the JD and then did something else because, you know, it was worthwhile because they had the JD. But, and then beyond that, law school is very expensive and it's very competitive. Unlike at Whittier, if I recall correctly, you're not really being graded on a curve, whereas in law school it's something, I think my school's at a 3.0 curve, so half the people have above a 3.0 and half have below a 3.0. And that's one of the higher curves in the country. And I think a lot of people look at law and they think, oh, I'm going to be able to make a lot of money, it's going to be fun, and, you know, lawyers are successful people. There are a lot of successful attorneys, but most of them aren't. And most of them are not making much more than you might come and getting a job right out of Whittier, except that lawyers are working 80, 90 hours a week. So, with that said, I think that if you really want to be an attorney, go and shadow an attorney for a while. Get an internship with a local law office or two, or just go and talk to some. Find out, you know, whether they like their jobs, whether they would have gone into something different entirely, and see if this is a field that you really want to go into. And that said, to be a little bit more optimistic, it can be a very rewarding profession. You do get to help people with serious problems. You get to counsel people, and I think that, you know, helping someone navigate the legal system, whether it's civil or criminal, is one of the highest things that you can do. You can help people immensely doing that. To be a little bit cynical again, you don't get to pick every client, and it's not angels that need attorneys all the time. But if you're comfortable with being able to make arguments that maybe you don't agree with all the time, for the sake of trying to further the justice system and to make sure that the truth comes out and that, you know, someone neutral is deciding things on a fair basis, then go for it. So, you know, spend some time, go and talk to an attorney, work for a couple different attorneys, because each attorney is different, each field is different. Right now I'm working for a plaintiff's firm he's a solo practitioner, meaning he's the guy that sues people and he works on his own. And, you know, there were times over the summer when I would work 3 hours straight, not sleeping, 30 hours in the office straight. And right now I'm working for a defense firm where they come in at 9 in the morning and they leave by 5 at the latest. So it can be a completely different environment from firm to firm. So yeah, go and spend some time. With regards to the process of applying to law school and getting into law school, I view it as, you shouldn't view it as, you know, here's the hurdles that I need to get through in order to get into law school. You should view the steps you need to take as training for how you'll be able to perform while you're in law school. So you have to have your LSAT score and your GPA. Those are the two things that law schools really look at. They will set out a pile, and if you don't make their GPA and LSAT cutoffs, they will throw you in the trash can and not even look at the rest of your application. But that said, once they do look at your application, they also really want to see what kind of diversity you can bring to the law school, which means, you know, the types of experiences that you've had, and how you got involved, and whether or not you can take on a heavy workload and succeed. Now, when I was applying to law school, I had a non-traditional route. When I first got to Whittier, I failed out my freshman year. So when I applied to law school after having come back and got involved at Whittier, my GPA was absolutely terrible. My resume or my application should have been tossed in the waste bin of pretty much every law school that I applied to, and for some it was. I got rejected by Syracuse, I think, after 3 days, so they didn't even look at it. But you know, so they are going to look at your GPA and your LSAT, but that's not all. Right now, if you really want to go to law school, start working on your GPA. Make sure that you're getting as close to a 4.0 as you can. And begin studying for the LSAT as soon as you can. Not, if you're a freshman, don't start studying for it now. It's a waste of time. But, by the time you're a junior, order the old LSATs and just start taking them. See if you can sit down and do 3 timed LSATs in a row every weekend. If you can pull that off and be okay with that, then you're probably ready for law school, because it means you can sit down for a long period of time and focus and try and improve yourself. And that's different than what most people are doing. The way you succeed in law school is, because it's on a curve basis, everything is really competitive. There are lots of stories or rumors at different schools, not Loyola, thankfully, about students who, if they have a class assignment, they go into the library and they find the book that everybody else needs, move it over to a different shelf. And, that kind of stuff does happen. I've been kicked out of study rooms in the library because people didn't want me there. And it's gamesmanship. There's a little bit of brinksmanship there. But if you're able to sit down and figure out if all the stuff that I'm doing to be able to prepare for this exam, and by the way, all of your grades in law school are based on one exam typically, and it's closed book. You have to figure out, what is everyone else doing to study for this exam? I'm going to do all the things they're doing, but I'm going to do something more to make sure that when I go into that exam, I'm going to have that one little fact pattern or that one little issue down that nobody else is even going to remember. And you try to be creative, and law school is trying to prepare you for the grueling process of being a lawyer. My first year, I don't think I saw my friends more than 3 times over the course of the entire year. And I'm in Los Angeles. All my friends live here. But every single weekend, I'd be up till 3 or 4 in the morning, getting 4 or 5 nights or 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night studying. It's just something you have to do if you want to be successful in law school. I don't know what else I can really add. Hope I wasn't too cynical. The first year of law school, it's hell. Second, the 2 years after that are easy as pie, because everybody figures out what their GPA is and nobody cares about grades anymore.
So how large is your class as you're marching through? Are you seeing people dropping out?
Yeah, we had, during your first year of law school, you're broken up into sections. So there's maybe 100 people in your section you take every single class with. And it's, constitutional law and torts and criminal law and just the basic kind of boring stuff. And I think we probably lost 15 to 20 people out of my section after the first year. Some of them dropped out, we had like 1 or 2 midterms during the first year of law school. Some of them dropped out after those. There was one kid who dropped out in the middle of finals, but kept coming to finals so that he could sit there and turn in a terrible, half-assed exam to help his friends out on the curve, because he knew that his grade was going to be so low that it would help everyone else out. Because he's going to wind up paying the tuition anyway, so why not help his friends? He went into gambling and makes a lot. But yeah, it's tough.
I do remember one of the panels, one of the attorneys said that his first day in law school, that his professor said, look to the right of you, look to the left of you. Those 2 people aren't going to be here at the end. So basically 2/3 don't make it through.
I remember
his experience.
The night before my first class, it was a contracts class, and I was absolutely terrified. I had seen the movies, where they sit there and grill students, please recite the facts of such and such case and what was the holding, blah, 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 and stand up while you do it in front of everybody. So I was terrified. I didn't know what to expect. So I went and found a recording of one of the classes from years earlier of that professor, I think at a different school. And it was, him say, I listened to his very first class, and I listened to it, and I was like, this doesn't sound that bad at all. It's not. The whole Socratic, please, answering questions before a professor, Whittier prepares you really well to be able to deal with that, because you get individual attention from professors that people at big schools don't get at all.
Any questions?
I have 2. One, Out of all the law schools you got into, what made you choose the one you went to?
This is fun. It was two things, kind of, and it was one of the most difficult decisions in my life because it was down to the University of San Francisco, the University of Denver, and Loyola. And I had all my friends here. Colorado was home, and I love San Francisco, but crossed San Francisco off pretty quickly. So it came down to between Loyola and Denver, and I didn't know whether I should go back home or stay in LA. And it came down to the last 24 hours before one of them was going to say, okay, you waited too long, you're off the list, go away. And I went and I looked at apartments in downtown LA and saw that you could have a pool on top of the roof, like 13 floors up. I was like, okay, I think I'm sold. Just to be sure, I flipped a coin. And, you know, I had never been inside the campus of Loyola ever, which is a mistake. You should visit every campus. And you know, Loyola was the best school that I got into in terms of rankings, and I thought, you know, I've got all my friends here, I think I should try this out. If not, I can go back home.
And then also, do you wait till like your second or third year to decide what type of law you wanted to go into, or?
I still don't know what type of
You
law I'm
still
going
don't?
into.
Okay.
You don't really get to decide. If you get into a firm, they're going to, you know, they'll ask you what you want to do. If you're really focused and you have connections in a certain field, you can go into that. But just, you know, after your first year, take classes that you enjoy, and that way you'll have that experience. And maybe you start off on your own with your own firm and do that. Or you can go into another firm and say, look, I've taken, like I'm about to take election law, and that's something I'm interested in. So I can go to an election law firm and say, hey, I've taken election law. I know all the stuff you're working with.
This isn't really about school, but just out of curiosity, a question. You said earlier that like you hope that the truth comes out and you're doing like good for people, but isn't it more like you have to lie for people?
No, you are not. There's a difference between spinning something and lying. You can make your best case while not, you're not coming out and saying, you know, for example, in criminal law, murderers need to be defended. You're not going to come out and say, oh yeah, my client did it. You're going to challenge the state's case and say, look, you can't prove my client did it. And that's, you know, that's to protect our civil rights. And it's unethical for you to go into a court and present something that's completely false. And I think a lot of lawyers get a bad rap for, they're often considered dishonest. And to be sure, there are some dishonest lawyers. But it's not about lying on behalf of your client, but making the best case that you can. And if you can't make that best case, you settle the case and keep it out of court.
So can I ask just a very specific question about a case that's in the news right now, like Michael Jackson's doctor trial? So this morning, you know, his defense lawyers had put forth, I guess, that perhaps Michael Jackson injected himself.
Mm-hmm.
So now I thought, you know, then the doctor on the stand said, no, that was impossible, it couldn't have happened. So then I thought, well, did his defense attorneys just like pull that out of the air, like, let's say that?
Maybe.
You know?
It
Okay.
could be entirely possible.
That's not lying, that it's just putting a scenario out there that
because
might confuse the issue enough.
You have to come up with scenarios to say, like, okay, you know, the state's making this case, but under these facts, isn't it possible that something else completely different happened? Because if something else it's possible that something else completely different happened, then you haven't met your burden of proof to show beyond a reasonable doubt that this is what happened and my client was guilty. Now, personally, I think that the jury's going to come back with a guilty verdict after that.
Just curious. Any other questions for any of our panelists? Anything that's come up for you that you're curious about? Okay.
Well, I have a question for all of you. What was like your method of choice for studying?
Good question.
For me, it changed as I went through different programs. When I was at Whittier, I could actually sit at the library and study quietly. Then my attention span disappeared. And through medical school, that wasn't going to work. There was too much information to try to just like soak in. I had to study with study groups. I had a study partner that we would always get together, and sometimes like the two of us would actually go and join another group because hearing it, reading it, saying it. It all had to be done. I had to do all things to get things to stick. And I still have no attention span to stick. I have to constantly be doing something. Sitting down to read an article is part of my job, right? Part of all of our jobs, keeping updated with what you do. And it's hard. It's hard to sit something from beginning to end, especially because there's so condensed with information, and it's not like reading a fun book. It's as fun as it is. It's something